Okay, now that we have our design done, our next piece we need to do is actually try and determine what kind of variables we're going to have in our program. It's much easier to do it at this point in time, so you don't have to guess when you actually get into your code. Again, we look at our inputs and our outputs. So basically, our variables are going to be our inputs and our outputs and our subtotals. Okay, that's all our variables will ever be: inputs, outputs, and subtotals. With that said, our mulch type, we need to determine what's the data type. Well, it'll be a string. The number of bags would be an integer. And then we need to determine what the scope is. And in this case here, our scope's going to be local, correct? Meaning, once we're done with our procedure or button click, we're done with it. We don't need it in memory anymore. And with that said, it can be released from the memory for the next time we actually click the button. Our outputs is going to be our mulch type total. Once again, once we display that total for that particular mulch type, the number of bags plus the times then the cost of that mulch, we're done with it. However, the order subtotal would be a class level variable because we want to keep that. We're accumulating that based upon hitting the add button over and over and over again. Does that make sense? That would be the class level scope type. Hopefully you all understand that. Both of these would be a decimal. So with that said, we usually teach that all decimals should be doubles, okay? Now, for the most part, doubles works well. Hopefully you understand the difference between doubles and singles and decimals, along with shorts and longs and integers. If not, please contact your instructor so I can give you something to kind of look at. With that said, these would be doubles, okay? Down here, our output, our inputs it's going to be a local string, will be our zip code. Our delivery requested is going to pretty much be our button, our radio button. So we're not going to really put that into a variable, all right? And our outputs, I should sit back and say, our outputs in this case, our tax is going to be local, and it will be a double also. And our delivery cost will be local, and it will be a double. And finally, our order total will be local. And again, all of these are local because as soon as we're finished with that button click on the total, once it's displayed, we're done with it. We don't need to do anything more. Does that make sense? Okay, so with that said, let's dive into the code to try to get a little bit of an idea of how to take this design and apply it to the program. That's the goal. This design here should not be Visual Basic Code. Make sure of that. I really don't want you to use our standard naming conventions in pseudocode. I don't want you to use VB in pseudocode. I want you to use structured English, very much like I have right here. The goal would be is you can take this design to any language. So we don't want it to look like VB. That's beyond the point. The point is design it first to be able to take it to any language, and then you go to that language and you figure out how to interpret the pseudocode into the language that you're learning. Okay? So with that said, let me go ahead and bring up my solution here. Okay? So my solution looks like this. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and run it here real fast so you can get an idea how it should work and what I have working here. Okay, oops. Make this a little bit bigger. There we go. There we go. Cool. And so in this case here, if I want some mulch and I live here and I want some black chips and I want 5 bags of that, I do want it delivered. So I went ahead and reset. I already set this to what do you want to say? I created a default for delivery on this. Okay, I think that's always a good job, a good idea to create defaults on radio buttons. It prevents the need for validation, right? So make sure you always set a default. And I'll make sure you know how to do that here in a second. So in this case, I'm going to add the product, and as you see, mulch type pops up with bags and totals. So black chips, 5 bags. I went ahead and did some fun things because you should be able to change your name and your zip codes now that the order is going, and the same thing for your delivery. So I actually disabled those, and I'll show you in my program, or you can go find it in my program and how I did that. In this case here, maybe we want some red chips. Let's do this. Let's do red shredded with our black, and I want 20 bags of that. All right, I'm going to add it up there. So now as you see how this all works. We can do some things to make sure that this top line doesn't repeat over and over again. It's just logic to do something like that, but pretty simple once you see it in this case. All right, I don't know, maybe we'll add one more. Let's go ahead, and we want some brown chips just to complement it. We get a couple bags of that, and we add that, and here we go. Finally, when I'm done with all that, I want to total my order, And as you see here, my total for all my bags is $214. My tax is $14.98. My delivery is $10 based upon I do want delivery with for my zip code 4102, with my grand total being $238.98. Okay? If I want to clear it all out, I'll hit clear and I can start all over again. Pretty cool? All right, let's walk into the code and kind of see how we did this. All right, so if I go into my code here, as you can see, I got a few things. Number one, zip code. I'm going to keep that as a class level variable. I think I actually said it was local before, but it's a class level because I'm going to use it in both buttons. One for validation purposes, the other one actually to use. I'm going to use a DBL order subtotal. That's that one we did say should be class level. Okay, that's the one we're going to accumulate. I have this first product on here that I'm going to show you as a way to determine how only to break the header out one time. There's a couple of ways of doing that, and I'll show you both here as we continue on. Okay, my button add product. Well, once again, if I go over to my add mulch piece here, I got my add mulch, and I'm going to get and validate input, and then I'm going to call calculate product subtotal, accumulate total, and display product. My code should reflect that. Get and validate input. I'm going to calculate the product subtotal, accumulate the total, and display. You see how that works? It should be that clean. Once again, this button should basically tell me the story of this program. And if I name my things well, and I will come back on you if you don't name your variables correctly, and you don't name your procedures and functions correctly, meaning make them meaningful. Remember, you're not writing this for you, you're writing this for the next person who's going to maintain this. So if you have vague names, it's going to be really hard to maintain it in the future. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to calculate so this is going to be a function where I'm going to calculate product subtotal. So first thing this is going to do is get and validate input. I'm going to pass down my bags, my product, and my validation. Okay, Boolean validated. Boolean validated tells me everything was validated, so I can control my program here. With that said, it will come through and it will say I'm going to calculate product subtotal. I'm going to pass my bags down and so on. What I'm going to do here, I don't have a lot of time, but I want with this video, but I'm going to go ahead and start this to show you how this kind of works. Okay, once again, I don't know why it's doing this for me, but whatever, has a little bit of mind of its own sometimes. And so we will put Bob and 41042, and we will do the mulch type, and we'll put number of bags. So let's go ahead and add a product, and it comes in here. This is what I call debugging. Hopefully everybody is comfortable with debugging their program. If you're not, learn how to do so. It saves you hours of time. So this is going to call this, and we come down here, I'm going to validate name. The first thing I'm going to do is determine if the name is there. If I hover over this text box, we see Bob is there, so it should immediately go down to the end if, and it does, and everything is good. Validation stays good. It's going to check zip code. If you look at my zip code here, I'm going to make sure it's there. Then if it is there, I'm going to check to see if it was a delivery. And if it was a delivery, I want to make sure that it's one of those three zip codes that can only have delivery. If not, I'm going to tell them that right off the bat. I don't want to do any calculations until they get all the input correctly. So in this case, what this is going to do is walk through, check to see if I ask for delivery, check to see if it's one of those three zip codes. If it is, it's good. If it's not, I'm going to say BB Landscape only delivers to those zip codes, and to try again. Okay, next one, validate product. In this case here, I know a lot of people were trying to figure out cool little ways of dealing with this. Well, here's the good news. I'm going to show you those cool little ways probably starting next week or so. But right now, all I really expected was what you know. And in what you know is basically going through and asking the questions. So what I did was I asked what came back from the product, and based upon that, I created an STR product, which was which basically took off the cost associated with it. Make sense? Okay. So you can take a look at that. Once again, this code is out there for you to kind of review and modify maybe your program and make sure you understand. So in this case, that's what we did. Finally, we're validating the bags. You should know what try parse is right now and how that all works. So I'm doing a short try parse. Short means it's an integer, and so if it is an integer, it's going to, meaning if the txt.text has contents, it's an integer, it will parse it and put it into SHT bags. And then I'm going to check for range right off the bat, man, if it's greater than 0 and less than 51, and if it is, everything is good. It will come all the way down here and come back. It'll check if everything validated, and it is. It's true, as you see. And let's see. And then with that, we're going to come in here. We're going to calculate the subtotals. So basically what I did, a couple different ways of attacking this. So if yours is not exactly like mine, but it works pretty well, but it has the same ideas, you're good. I checked to see what the product was. It was all the chips. It's $7. Everything else was $7.90. If you use constants, that's perfectly fine. For people who have had me before, I'm not a big constants person because a lot of that's going to be in databases later on. So you'll notice when we get into this course a little bit in the latter half of this semester, we won't be using many constants anymore. Everything will be coming from a database. But with that said, if you use constants, no big deal. Okay? So I did that. I accumulated my totals. See how I'm accumulating, and that's a class level variable, and I display my product. And then I reset different things. I went ahead and added that out there, and I reset and cleared my bags, and everything is good to go. And display, come back, and there it is. Pretty cool, huh? All right, cool. The rest of this program then goes down to the total button, right? Just click on it and we'll go right to it. One thing I also like doing when you write this, once again, you're writing this for somebody else. Remember that. And in doing so, make sure that everything calls down. Everything's pretty close. And I hate searching for procedures and functions all over the code. If you see calculate tax, you'll notice it's the first thing below it. My next thing is calculate delivery and so on. So in this case here, when I click the button, I calculate my tax, I calculate my delivery, where I basically ask if it's 41042 and so on. This is following my design piece by piece, okay? And then my total, and I basically go ahead and display it all out. Pretty, I don't know. I look at this saying this, you should be able to know how to do this. And if you do, that's great. Like I said, if it was a little bit of a different problem, you went off on a wrong, you got off on the wrong tangent in the beginning, but now you look at this and you say, oh God, now I see it. That's great. That's great. But once again, if you look at this and you say, I have no idea what you're doing, we probably need to talk as soon as you possibly can, because again, I don't want you to do poorly in this class. The goal is for you to learn how to program and learn how to program well. Okay, I cannot get you a job if you're barely getting by these classes, but I can get you a great job if you know how to program by the time you get done with this curriculum. All right, so kind of look at those pieces. Let's see, I was trying to look at a piece here. Let's see, let's go back up here on this display. I wanted to show you this. I gotta find it, sorry. There we go. And so in this case here, what I actually did was, if first product, I created this little flag, it's a Boolean flag. I set it to Y, and so what I did, I set it to true, okay? And then if it was, I created the first line. And if it wasn't the first one, I see how I set it to false after the first time, then I don't add that mulch type anymore. I just add the lines going through. Does that make sense? Take a look at that code there to learn how to write that one time. Another way of doing it is going into the items and putting this in there in the properties box, okay? The items in the properties box for that list box, and adding this to it. And then you don't have to worry about it in code. That would have worked out really well also. Okay, so this is the solution for it. Once again, hopefully this helps kind of walking through it. This is my expectations. This is what I expect you to be able to do. Or fairly close. Again, not everybody's going to write the same type of program I write, but it should be fairly close. And if you're way, way off, let's talk. But if you feel pretty good about moving forward, then we're going to get moving forward starting next week.